On a cold December night in 1996, a man walks into a bustling casino in Atlantic City. He planned to make an easy $50,000 over the holidays, but after a few rounds at the slot machines, his plan went terribly wrong. Police officers quietly approached him, asking him to step away from the counter. Their target was finally within reach. They followed him to his car, where they uncovered thousands of dollars worth of counterfeit tokens from every casino in Atlantic City. For months, authorities from multiple states had been meticulously building their case against him, wondering how he managed to create counterfeit tokens so perfect that even advanced laboratories couldn't detect the difference. Will the hunt for the king of casino cheating finally come to an end? This is the true story of Louis Colavecchio, the most notorious casino counterfeiter, and the relentless pursuit that led to his downfall. Our story begins in 1942, specifically at Providence, Rhode Island, the town where little Louis was born. His father, Benedict Colavecchio, had migrated from Italy to America. On getting there, he decided to live out the true American dream by becoming a business owner, making high-quality tools. Eventually, he opened up 2 large tool shops. A few years later, he will marry a beautiful woman, Theodora, with whom he had 3 children, among whom was Louis. While Louis's elder brother Ronald became a Jesuit in Brazil, and his elder sister Angela married a rich man in Providence, Louis was looking for a slightly different path. Little Louis showed to be intelligent, which was why his parents encouraged him to get educated. Even while working, he earned a bachelor's degree in business at the age of 22, thereby becoming the first person in the family to graduate from college. He had always thought of becoming like his father. Since he was a business expert, he soon discovered a market for jewelry. So he opened up a store called Trop Jewelry Company in Providence. Although he didn't start making significant profits until 10 years after he opened up his store, he kept on pressing hard. He soon got his rewards. At the time when there was an increasing popularity of the jewelry market, his business boomed. Louis's business grew at a steady rate that he could finally afford his dream house, a $130,000 house in a posh neighborhood. Like his father, he had started to live the American dream too. By virtue of the neighborhood where he bought a home, he soon got accustomed to a certain lifestyle he wasn't willing to give away, a life full of luxuries. There were tennis courts, a golf course, and even a swimming pool exclusively for residents. Louis was determined to enjoy the new life till the end, but that never materialized. A few years after he moved, the unthinkable happened. His store was broken into. Right before his eyes, the thieves took away every item in his store. He couldn't help himself as he was tied up amid a brutal torture given to him. That's a very horrible experience for him, to say the least. He had invested all he had in the business. There were years he made no profits and had to keep investing and investing. However, it's quite unfortunate he had to face such a bad experience when he least expected. The event would cause him a lasting shock. The shocking part of the story is that he couldn't stay conscious to witness the end part of the robbery as he fainted. By the time he was conscious, he found himself in a hospital bed. At that time, he wasn't fully aware of everything that happened until he was told he lost everything he built for more than a decade. What could have caused this havoc to Louis? How will he fund his newly found life? Would he be willing to start from scratch? Keep watching to find out about his next move. Although the police were determined to unravel the theft and those behind it, Louis and his company couldn't wait any further. So they filed for bankruptcy, and that's how his company folded up. That event marked the beginning of another phase in the life of Louis. Interestingly, Louis was still passionate about running his own business. A few years after the incident, he opened a second jewelry store. He named it Diamonds in the Sky. The new store was filled with high-quality diamonds. As a precautionary measure, he made sure the new store had top-of-the-line security features. Day in, day out, his store was always full of vendors. It was a massive comeback for him. It got to a point that his neighbors became suspicious. Was he selling a certain kind of diamond, they pondered? Their concerns grew worse once they sighted a small black sign posted on the door of the jewelry store. The sign read, "Precision work by appointment only." From the sign, there was no mention of anything related to jewelry. It was at that point nearby stores knew there was more to Louis's store than meets the eye. Even though their stores were open to the public, unlike Louis's, they had no customers. Unknown to the neighboring store owners, most of Louis's earnings were actually from the casinos and not his jewelry business. But how? You'll soon find out. Oftentimes, Louis could be seen traveling to Atlantic City. He would usually tell his friends and family he was going on a business trip, and not knowing that he was actually spending most of his time at the slot machines at Caesar's Palace Hotel and Casino. Here's how his journey into the world of gambling began. Despite being a master craftsman and jewelry designer, always making handmade, unique jewelry, Louis found it difficult to make headway in his jewelry store. After 27 years of hard work, at the age of 51, he had nothing to show for the many years. Then he became depressed. He felt nobody cared for, loved, or needed him. Even his friends were worried about his state. However, in September 1993, one of his friends decided to find a way of cheering Louis up. A plan came to his mind. He suggested a road trip to Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut. At that time, it was like the gambling mecca, even though it had mostly table games. The idea didn't go down well with Louis. He was never at any time involved in gambling. However, he kept watching while everyone else played. A friend who discovered his lack of interest approached him and suggested that he try the slots. At first, the slots looked so strange to him. He felt no enjoyment. However, after he put in a few coins, the game got interesting. In the real sense, it was the token that got him attracted to the game. Foxwood's token was worth $10 as of then. Louis considered it a piece of jewelry. As a jewelry maker, his major job is to copy things. Then he saw a challenge to his skill and talent. His friend put it up to him to make him a copy of one of the tokens. He couldn't resist the idea, as it was all appealing to him. What if I could make counterfeit coins to use in the machines? Louis thought to himself. So he decided to give it a try. Who knows if it was his pathway towards making millions of dollars? Louis then recollected how his father taught him that everything mechanical is man-made and could be copied with the right tools. It isn't an easy task to copy a casino token. Tokens, especially the ones used at slot machines, are usually minted the same way real currencies are minted by the US Mint. Besides, money counterfeiting was a serious crime. In those days, counterfeiters were drawn to the $10 and $20 gold coins. However, following their elimination in the early 1930s, counterfeiters ran out of business. Other coins were not worth their time, resources, and attention. Even when the silver dollar became their favorite in the 1940s and 1950s, its reign didn't last long, as the U.S. Treasury discontinued its circulation in 1964. Louis saw his first $10 slot machine token in 1993 and vowed to copy it. The difficult part of the endeavor was that he had to make the counterfeited token close to the original that the electronic detectors in the slots wouldn't be able to detect it was phony. He had got the skill to do that, but he needed a strategy to beat the casinos out of millions of dollars without raising any suspicion. Everyone on the casino floor is usually being watched, which makes it difficult and almost impossible to cash out tokens without first playing. Another option would be for him to take his counterfeited tokens to the cashier. Unfortunately, he wasn't willing to take that path, as it was more dangerous if he got caught. Louis knew all of these. He said, "Casinos are very picky. When you come in the front door, they want to see you play. They expect you to spend some money, so I'll spend a little money on them, just a little, and then they'll spend a whole lot on me." Also, playing for a long time at a single casino will attract attention and detection. Therefore, he thought that instead of hitting a casino to win about $3 million, a smarter move would be to hit 30 casinos and get $100,000 from each. It was the right strategy for him. But that's not all. He needed to target big casinos where he could make the kind of money he wanted to without them feeling the impact of the loss. He soon realized there were a few ones 5 hours south of Providence in Atlantic City, New Jersey, including Trump Castle, Caesars, Sands, Tropicana, Resorts, and Bally's. The implication of his strategy is that he would have to forego the token for each of the casinos, each of which had their unique coins, otherwise known as tokens, as permitted by the US Mint. These tokens were usually available in many denominations. Each of the 12 casinos he discovered had $10, $25, and $100 denominations. That's a huge amount of work for him. But Louis was undeterred. Initially, he started the whole project himself. However, it got to a point that he realized he needed help. He would be making a lot of tokens, which required a lot of processes, considering the weight of the token and the amount of metal required for them. Even if he had to recruit a few people, they had to be trustworthy and wouldn't compromise his elaborate scheme. That's a costly adventure, but he was ready for it. As he described himself, "I'm relentless. If you can say anything about me, it's that I never quit. I'm tenacious. If I have a goal in mind, nothing will stop me from achieving it. That coin was not going to stop me." He also realized he needed a die and an industrial press. With a die, he would be able to process metal into any shape. While he was thinking over the new challenge, he remembered a retired professional die maker that lived nearby. Even if Louis had the die, there was no way he could punch all the metal alone. Also, he didn't have a room to store all the metal he would need. Therefore, he approached the man and suggested that he keep the metal at his place so he could cut the raw slugs for him. In return, he would give him a certain percentage of his earnings. Once the man cut the slug, he would pass it to the industrial press to burn the mold into the desired metal shape. From there, it would be sent to Louis for the final process, which is to squeeze the token. The man accepted, and Louis would squeeze numerous tokens all night. One thing we possibly can't take away from Louis is his attention to detail. He was very meticulous about that. He made sure all the details on the original coin, the symbols, texts, etc., were replicated on the counterfeits, as anything short of that would be rejected by the machines. It was time for Louis to try out his innovation. Before heading to Atlantic City, he decided to start playing with a whopping $50,000 in tokens, albeit counterfeited, the very ones he made. As a decoy, he requested that his girlfriend Julie go along with him. She was the only one he could trust, as she was a decent person before Louis decided to bring her into his criminal activity. The two of them would pose as a couple. It's time to hit the casino. Louis and Julie headed to Atlantic City, their car loaded with counterfeit tokens. It was a dangerous journey for the two, as they would be carrying out a criminal activity under the eagle eye of several security apparatuses aimed at combating cheating and other related crimes. It's either they succeeded or landed in jail. It was summer in 1996. Louis was determined to begin an assault on casinos. It was too late for him to get back. He had invested 2 years of his time and even at least $100,000 of his retirement savings into the counterfeiting journey. Fortunately for them, they made $25,000 by the end of the first night. They were so happy that they were in a haste to try their luck again the second day. They made another $25,000. Over the next 3 months, Louis and his girlfriend would go on a counterfeiting rampage. Next, he headed west to Las Vegas and Reno. There he collected sample tokens from as many casinos as he could visit, taking them home to copy. Once he examined a token, it would only take him and the die maker little time before they replicated near-perfect copies. He continued beating casinos out of thousands of dollars. There was a time he made $12,000 in an hour. From hundreds of thousands of dollars, they started willing millions of dollars. He couldn't contain his joy. The hard work and investment he had made eventually paid off. He would later use the proceeds to fund his lifestyle of luxury. Subsequently, he started visiting the Mohegan Sun Casino and Resort in Connecticut, making counterfeit tokens that would work there too. In no time, his counterfeiting empire began to expand. Having mastered the art of counterfeiting, he was able to make counterfeit coins for a host of other casinos. However, something incredible happened. It was a common routine for casinos to count their tokens periodically. The purpose was to assess the number of tokens lost or damaged. Then, an employee at Caesar's Palace in Atlantic City noticed something strange after taking the coin inventory. They realized they had a surplus of $10 slot machine coins to the tune of $24,000. There were no plausible explanations for how it happened, so they brought in the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement to help unravel the puzzle. The New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement immediately swung into action. Upon investigation, they found out that the extra tokens were premium counterfeit coins, although they couldn't detect the differences as both the original and fake tokens looked so much alike. They wasted no time and sent word to all casinos in the area. Bally's Park Place and Showboat casinos carried out a check for fake tokens and soon discovered them. The same thing was discovered in a few other casinos in the area. None of them could tell who could have used them, so each casino was asked to step up their security and be on the lookout for visitors who might be involved in the scandal. They were determined to get the perpetrator, whether they were an individual or a group. The following weekend, Louis arrived at Caesar's Palace with his current girlfriend at that time, Donna Ulrich. He had no idea the authorities already discovered that counterfeit coins were being used at casinos within the area. At that point, Louis's operation had expanded beyond measures. While casinos were running around trying to find out about the counterfeiting ring suspected to be on the loose, Louis and Julia were crisscrossing several states. Louis was no longer driving a car full of tokens thousands of miles. Instead, he shipped tokens to himself wherever he planned to hit a casino. He and his girlfriend went on several vacations. They would hang out with the big guys in town, but they soon met their end. On that fateful day that they returned to the Bally's in Atlantic City, their behavior quickly caught the attention of the guards. You'd remember each of the casinos already stepped up their security ever since they discovered a suspicious ring using counterfeited tokens in their slot machines. It wasn't long before a security camera captured a man with $10 tokens losing 3 coins to a malfunctioning machine but wouldn't complain. A legitimate gambler would always complain about a malfunction of that nature, but to the surprise of the staff that saw the moment, the man in question walked away. The staff notified another employee, a spot attendant, asking that they fix the machine. On getting there, they discovered 200 suspected counterfeited $10 tokens on the top of the hopper. They quickly connected the face of the man to the previous experience they had with counterfeited tokens. Police put up the face of the man on tape, hoping that they would eventually get his name when next he returned. After 48 hours, they still didn't hear from him. Suspecting that he could no longer use counterfeit tokens at the Bally's, the man went to the Caesars. Again, he used his counterfeited $10 note on the slot machine. The security suspected foul play and called the attention of the other team to Louis. They observed him for several hours and identified the machines he used. Once he was done and left the building, the police opened up the machines only to discover a lot of counterfeit tokens. Upon investigation, the identity of the man was traced to a Providence, Rhode Island man. The man was Louis Colavecchio. Normally, Louis was supposed to be arrested, but the police soon discovered that counterfeiting casino tokens was not a crime in Rhode Island, since they weren't considered currencies in their state. They had to look for a way to nab him. On the other side, Louis had no idea he was about to get caught. He and his girlfriend continued to hit casinos everywhere. It was when he decided to hit Atlantic City again that he got nabbed. Here's how it happened. Louis thought he could make an easy $50,000 over the holidays. Suspecting that he was being tailed when he got to Bally's, he left and stopped over at Caesars. He was allowed to play. Not long after, police came to meet him, asking that he step away from the counter. They followed him to his car, only to find over $50,000 worth of counterfeit tokens in his trunk. The tokens were from every casino in Atlantic City. The interesting part of it was that transporting counterfeit tokens over state lines is a crime. Eventually, the police had a case against Louis. They secured a search warrant and searched Louis's workshop. There, they seized 123 dices. From his detailed records, they got to know about the die man. In addition, they saw thousands of pounds of metal, which had been cut into strips. Both Louis and Julie were charged with trademark violations and interstate traffic of counterfeit goods. I sat there for days looking at tokens under a microscope. It was unbelievable. I couldn't tell the difference. Those were the words of Jerry Longo, who worked with the Mohegan Sun in connecting Louis to the crimes carried out across casinos in New Jersey and Connecticut for 2 years during a phone interview with the Washington Times. According to him, he could only notice minor defects and that an American Indian woman on the $100 token had a rounded headdress instead of a sharp point. He added that the shape of a canoe paddle was also slightly different. Since Louis had been caught, he had to face punishment for his crimes. Atlantic City casinos in New Jersey and the Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut filed charges against him for counterfeiting casino tokens in a massive operation. Subsequently, in 1997, he was sentenced to 27 months in prison and another 7-year suspended sentence. He had offered to tell the court how he made the tokens in exchange for a slightly lighter sentence. Also, Part of the plea was to pay a $90,000 restitution, out of which he only paid $2,400. There were rumors that the U.S. Mint even contacted Louis when he was in prison to tell them how he replicated the coins so flawlessly, such that the dies he made lasted longer than theirs. Obviously, they were amazed by his extraordinary skills and could probably tap from his innovative skills. According to him, he told them how he used a different grade of steel. Although he also claimed the U.S. Mint reimbursed him for the press seized from him, it's difficult to believe his story, considering his history of misrepresenting and understating facts. Apart from the fact that Louis was punished for his crimes, his actions tarnished his family name forever. His father was known as an honest man, operating legitimate businesses. Neighbors in the town of Providence could only wonder how Louis decided to deviate from the path his father had established. While in prison, his family looked after the jewelry store. However, they had to auction off Louis's counterfeit tools and equipment, hoping that he would never use them again once he got back from prison. In 2006, Louis was released from prison. Upon his return, it was thought that he would turn a new leaf and look for ways to restore his integrity, either by continuing his jewelry business or starting an entirely new business. But to the surprise of many, Louis seemed not to have learned his lesson. Just a few months after he was released, he was arrested by the FBI for attempting to use counterfeit coins again. Luckily for him, he was released on a $25,000 bail, which was paid by an anonymous person. The first counterfeit coin incident made casinos take some extra precautions to avoid a similar occurrence in the future. First, they encrypted their machines with the latest software, such that they would be able to detect counterfeit coins. Later, most casinos stopped using coins for their slot machines. Nowadays, most slot machines are electronic and work off of a reloadable card. A few others even adopted the use of paper vouchers that can later be converted into money. But that's not the end of Louis's story. He would later admit that he actually took part in several arson fires, shootings, and robberies in conjunction with the mafia, including the robbery of his first jewelry store. In other words, he arranged the robbery of his store. And the reason? So he could get money from his insurance company. Louis was so smart to only make the revelation after the statutes of limitation for prosecution of the crimes had expired, although he would later be arrested on other crimes. More recently, in November 2013, he was arrested again. But this time it was in relation to a different crime. He was found with over 4 pounds of marijuana on hand. A further search of his home by the police led to the discovery that he was growing 16 plants for which he claimed to have a license to grow. He even made the most sophisticated watering system ever seen in the world. That's incredible. He must have committed a lot of time to research. While he was able to secure a note from his physician recommending that he took marijuana for medical use, he found it difficult to explain why he also had an excessive amount of cocaine in his home. Possibly he had a health condition that could be managed only with cocaine. We can never tell. Louis went on to boast about being the world's greatest counterfeiter. He told some friends he could replicate security features in the US dollar bill, including a distinctive reaction to ultraviolet light. According to him, even if he was caught, he already put up a defense, which is a claim that he was working as a counterfeit deterrent specialist. Unknown to him, an informant overheard him boast and informed the Coventry police. In December 2018, a 6-month U.S. Secret Service undercover investigation concluded with U.S. Secret Service agents raiding his Pawtucket, Rhode Island home. You wouldn't believe what they discovered. A whopping $29,000 in counterfeit $100 bills. That's not all. A host of other items were also recovered, including a mechanical printing press, images of $100 bills, a computer, and other counterfeiting materials. Louis was subsequently arrested. The following year, he pled guilty to intent to defraud and possess counterfeit obligations. He was sentenced to 15 months in federal prison. By then, he was already 77 years old. In imposing the sentence, U.S. District Court Judge John J. McConnell, Jr. made a funny but witty remark. "I think you could con God out of taking your life." Going further, Judge McConnell doubted the possibility of rehabilitating Louis, going by his history of counterfeiting. The judge maintained there was no need to protect the people from such an individual so he doesn't keep hurting people. He was right after all. Since age of 55, Louis had been convicted of 5 crimes, including using cocaine while out on bond. His excuse for using it was for sex. Louis is notorious for spinning a story. Just as it was almost impossible for authorities to spot a difference between slot machine tokens and the counterfeited ones made by Louis, it is often difficult to authenticate many of his stories. Well, his penchant for spinning paid off as he spun himself into prison. That's enough compensation. At 77, he's supposed to be in a retirement home, enjoying his remaining days by engaging in positive activities. But that's not the case with him. Instead, he was billed to spend some time in prison. Although a federal judge in Providence reduced Louis's sentence to time served, he maintained that Louis must maintain in custody until an appropriate release plan is in place. In response, Louis petitioned for early release, citing several medical issues that made him susceptible to COVID-19, including chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and hypertension. Some court records even have it that he was diagnosed with dementia during the same time. But Assistant U.S. Attorney Gerald B. Sullivan urged the court not to be deceived by Louis's old age and claims of failing health. He argued that the coin, referring to Louis, had benefited from both factors several times since his first arrest in 1996 in Atlantic City, where he carried out the biggest counterfeiting fraud involving legalized gambling in the history of New Jersey. In making his arguments, Sullivan relied on Louis's own words, which he documented in his published memoir less than a year after he received another suspended 7-year sentence on drug charges. In the book, Louis boasts about his criminal activities and his connection to the Patriarca crime family. He describes a life of hustling that began in his teens with a scheme to steal money from Catholics by selling rosaries in the names of priests dedicated to missionary work. But instead of giving the money to the missions, he kept it for himself. He also writes about other crimes he committed, including bank fraud, insurance scams, robbery, arson, and tricking a phone company by making devices that allowed people to make free long-distance calls. He shows a lack of respect for law enforcement, mocking their cheap suits and their inability to catch him. Additionally, the skilled tool and die maker from North Providence talks about the excitement of making fake slot machine tokens that were so accurate that even experts had a hard time telling them apart from the real ones. It wasn't until his final arrest at Caesars Atlantic City in the late 1990s that he was banned from every casino in the nation, a prohibition he still circumvented by posing as a woman to gamble. At a time, he was also convicted of obtaining money under false pretenses after stealing $100,000 from his 92-year-old aunt through a fraudulent septic tank scheme. He received a 54-month suspended sentence for this crime at the age of 64. Other convictions Louis faced included resisting arrest and drug charges for cultivating kilograms of marijuana in a sophisticated indoor grow operation. One common thing with the convictions is how he got suspended sentences. Therefore, Sullivan was right with the claim attributed to him earlier, that Louis had enjoyed several suspended sentences due to his failing health and old age. Maybe it was the reason he continued engaging in a series of crimes. Even while in prison, he recounts how he feasted on pasta stolen from the prison kitchen. That's to tell you he could go to any length to do what he knows how to do best, which is committing crimes. Unfortunately, Louis died a few weeks later, at the age of 78. Prior to that, a federal judge had granted him compassionate release from the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina, which is a prison for inmates with special health needs. Although we didn't know much about Louis's personal life, we learned he got divorced from his first wife in 1980, and his second wife also drowned in 2006. During his lifetime, he didn't talk much about his grown children. Louis's story is that of an individual who's so inclined into the world of criminality. Sometimes it felt like his only way to live was by getting involved in crimes. He would be remembered for his talent in crime circles. And that's the end of the story of Louis the Coin, the man who ran one of the most successful counterfeiting operations in the history of casino gaming and gambling. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos.